My daughter-in-law looked me dead in the eye and asked me to leave the maternity floor before my own grandchild was even born. That single request would end up destroying everything she had built. 5 days after that night, the billing office at a Denver hospital phoned me to confirm payment on a $9,000 charge tied to a signature I never wrote. And for the first time since that baby came into the world, I actually smiled. My name is Walter Reyes. I'm 60 years old, and for nearly 3 decades, I worked fraud cases for the Phoenix Police Department before I hung up my badge. That kind of work teaches you a hard lesson. People can fake almost anything for a little while, but money always tells the truth eventually. Roughly 3 weeks before my grandson arrived, my son's wife, Renee, rang me out of the blue. Her tone was bright, almost giddy. "Walter, the baby could come any day now. We really want you here when he's born." That warmth alone should have tipped me off. For the better part of 3 years, she'd never once called me anything but Mr. Reyes. Formal, distant. But there's something about becoming a grandfather that makes a man drop his guard. I'd been counting down the days ever since my son Marcus told me she was pregnant. I'd bought presents, booked a room close to the hospital, even dug out an old stuffed rabbit from Marcus's nursery years. A 12-hour drive gives you a lot of time to dream about meeting that baby, about your family wanting you in the room. The trip up from Phoenix wasn't gentle on an old body. I only pulled over for gas, coffee, and the occasional stretch. Every check-in call, Renee was the one who picked up Marcus's phone. "Drive careful, Walter. We can't wait." Looking back, every word of it sounds rehearsed, like lines memorized for a part. I rolled into the hospital a little past 2 in the morning, wrecked, stiff, but buzzing with excitement. The front desk pointed me toward the maternity wing, room 312. I practically jogged down that hallway. Then I spotted Marcus standing outside the delivery room, and the second he saw me, his face fell. Not joy, dread. "Dad, what are you doing here?" The question hit like a slap. Renee invited me. He looked back toward the door, then at me, caught somewhere between guilt and fear. She changed her mind. I asked what exactly she'd changed her mind about. Having anyone here. She wants it private. Says the stress isn't good for her. None of it sat right with me. Not the words themselves, but the way he delivered them. After interviewing thousands of liars in my career, I know their tells, and my own son was running through every single one. But a hospital corridor wasn't the place to fight it out, so I nodded, turned, and walked back to my car. The next 3 days crawled by like years. While my grandson took his first breaths somewhere inside that building, I sat in a hotel room 3 miles away, waiting for an invitation that never came. When Marcus finally called, it was only to stall me further. By the time I drove back to the hospital myself, they'd already checked out, gone home without a phone call, without so much as a text, without ever letting me lay eyes on the boy I'd crossed 2 states to meet. That sting was bad enough on its own. What came next made it look like nothing. 4 days after I was back in Phoenix, my phone lit up with a Denver hospital's number. The woman on the line was polished and pleasant, completely oblivious to the bomb she was about to drop. "Mr. Reyes, our system shows you're listed as the financial guarantor on Renee's delivery." I sat back at my kitchen table. "That's odd," I told her. "Because I never signed a thing." A pause followed. Then she explained that everything had been filed electronically through the hospital portal, under my name, my address, my personal details, my signature. I requested every document the second the call ended, and 20 minutes later, they hit my inbox. It took me half a minute to spot the problem. The signature was close, a passable copy, but 30 years chasing forgers teaches you what to look for. Wrong spacing, wrong slant, and the real giveaway. The timestamp put the filing right in the middle of my drive through Utah, hundreds of miles from that hospital. The forgery itself didn't shock me nearly as much as who was behind it. Renee. The same woman who'd lured me to Denver. The same woman who'd frozen me out at the delivery room door. The same woman about to stick me with a 5-figure medical bill. Most people would have exploded. I went quiet and got methodical instead. By that evening, my dining table looked like a war room. Phone logs, gas station receipts, hotel paperwork, GPS data from the drive, anything that pinned down exactly where I'd been when those forms were submitted. Then I started dialing. First call went to an old contact still working fraud cases in Denver, a guy I'd partnered with years back on a multi-state scheme. He agreed to quietly dig into Renee's background. Second call went to a former colleague who'd built a career chasing identity thieves. By midnight, 2 professionals were on it, and my gut told me this wasn't going to stop at one fraudulent hospital bill. The following afternoon, my Denver contact called back, and his voice had shifted. Tighter, more careful. Walter, something's off here. My chest tightened. Off how? Your son's wife barely has a paper trail. That stopped me cold. Everybody leaves a trail somewhere. Old jobs, old addresses, tax filings, credit history. Renee's was paper thin, almost like it had been built to order rather than lived. The more he dug, the stranger it got. Mismatched records, gaps where information should be, paperwork that looked fine on the surface but fell apart once you pushed on it. None of it was enough to arrest anyone, but it was more than enough to put me on edge because in my line of work, a manufactured past usually means somebody's hiding something real. That night, Marcus sent me a photo, my grandson, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, fast asleep. Nathan, finally, a name and a face I'd only seen in pixels. For a few seconds, my anger melted. Then a colder thought replaced it. If she'd forged my signature without blinking, what else might she be capable of? That question wouldn't let go of me. Over the following days, more pieces surfaced. Patterns, connections, names cropping up again and again around Renee's financial dealings. Nothing about it looked like coincidence. What had started as a forged hospital bill was starting to look like one small piece of something much bigger. Then came the call that changed everything. Friday evening, my phone rang again, and this time my contact sounded shaken. Walter, you might want to sit for this. I already was. We've tied her to several ongoing fraud investigations. The room went silent around me. How many? Enough that federal agents are paying attention. I stared out my kitchen window and couldn't find words because suddenly it all lined up. The invitation, the sudden exile, the forged paperwork, the carefully built story. None of it had been chance. I'd been played from the very first phone call. But the worst part wasn't what she'd done to me. It was the realization that my son and grandson might be standing in the path of something far more dangerous. So I stopped grieving like a wounded father and started thinking like the investigator I'd spent 30 years becoming. It was time to bait a trap. After 3 decades chasing financial crimes, I knew one truth above all. Greed doesn't walk away from easy money. I called Marcus for the first time since the birth, kept my voice light, and mentioned I'd just come into a modest inheritance from an old friend. Nothing huge, just enough to set something aside for Nathan's future. The response was instant. Within 2 days, Renee suddenly wanted a visit. Suddenly, she wanted family time. Suddenly, I was welcome around my own grandson again. That alone confirmed everything. The visit unfolded exactly as I expected. While I finally held Nathan for the first time, Renee kept steering every conversation toward money. Investments, trust accounts, property, plans for the future. She tried to sound offhand about it. She failed. Hidden cameras caught every word. 3 days later, someone tried transferring funds out of my account. Not me, but a device traced straight back to her. That was all the investigators needed. The arrest came within a day. When the full picture finally came together, it was worse than I'd imagined. Renee wasn't who she claimed to be at all. The hospital scam wasn't her first offense, and my family wasn't her first target. Marcus showed up at my door that night cradling Nathan, looking hollowed out. "Dad," he said quietly, "none of it was real." I put a hand on his shoulder. "The marriage might have been built on lies, son." I looked down at Nathan, sleeping peacefully against his chest. But this boy right here isn't one of them. Neither of us said anything for a long while. Then Marcus broke down. The kind of tears that come when the full weight of betrayal finally lands. 6 months on, the case closed. Everyone involved is facing charges. Marcus and Nathan moved back home to Phoenix, and most evenings now you'll find me on my porch, watching my grandson chase fireflies across the yard. I still think about that hospital corridor sometimes. The rejection, the forged papers, the lies. Then Nathan laughs, and I remember the most important thing of all. They thought they were taking something from my family. Instead, they only managed to bring the rest of us closer than ever.